Really great Wednesday. Well, I'll preface this by saying I got baptized, spirit-filled, speaking in tongues sometime in 1987. And I also wanted to mention too that I've heard a number of testimonies where people really saw the light when they spoke in tongues, and it wasn't like that for me. What happened to me was the very first time I saw somebody was in a really bad accident, and I was watching them, and this little old lady, this was a few years ago, so I've slept since then, so I can't really remember how old she was. She was 78 or 87, one of those two. I'm dyslexic, or I don't know what it was, but either way, it's one of those two. She was old, and she got hit head on by a car. She was walking pedestrian, and she stapled, and her head wrote off the hood of the car, and she was laying in a pool of blood on the ground. And under any circumstance that I could think of ever before I got saved, I'd have looked and gone, gee, that was bad. And I might have hung around like a seagull to see what was happening. And then I would have just driven away and gossiped about it with whoever else was interested. But instead, I had this amazing need to rush over to her and lay hands on her. So I did. I rushed over there. I laid hands on her. She had a pool of blood around her head. Her face was white. Her false teeth were vertical in her mouth. The hood of the car, I noticed kind of on the way past, was just annihilated. And so I just got down on my knees and I laid hands on her and just prayed in tongues. And there was all of the first time I'd ever done it, never done that before. And there were all these people milling around, and there were blankets getting put over, and there were people organising ambulances, and someone said that they'd managed to get her teeth out, and there were all of these things happening. And then there was these other people floating around that were doing the standard, you know, one guy was a painter and he was shaking his paint dust all over the lady, yelling at her to be raised up in the name of God and all of these things. And people were just grabbing these people and just taking them away. I knew all of that was kind of happening in my periphery, but nobody came near me, spoke to me, said anything. I just had my hand on her left shoulder and was praying away. And an amazing feeling went through me, went from my toes right through, went rushing out through my hands. And then I felt her move underneath my hand. So I opened my eyes, and all the colour had come back to her face. And she said, "Oh, I'm a silly old duffer. What's happened to me? Just help me up and I'll be on my way." And I'm going, "No, you don't really realise what's happened. So perhaps you just need to stay where you are. Wait till the ambulance gets there." And she, "Oh, I don't want to bother anybody, you know." And quite honestly, now I kind of feel like, really, I should have just helped her up and she'd have been on her way. But I still had this thing in me that said, "I saw what happened to you, and I see the blood around your head, and I saw you were just white. So you could better wait." So the ambulance turned up. It's a bit long-winded, but it's worth it. The ambulance turned up, and the guy gets out of the ambulance, and he looks and he sees the blood and he sees the head, and obviously 1 and 1 has to equal 2. So he's looking for where the blood came from, and he got to the point where he was almost pulling hairs apart, trying to work out where the blood was. And you could see this look of consternation on his face. He couldn't work it out because it was nowhere. So he just got this bandage, wrapped her up like a turban around her head, and took her to the hospital. And I followed up because it was such an amazing feeling to me and such a huge experience. So I followed up, and I told her what had happened, and because no one else had bothered. She didn't know. She just knew that she was walking across the road, and the next moment she was in hospital. And so I kind of filled in the details, and I told her about the Lord and what had happened and how, you know, I'd laid hands on her and stuff. And she said that she was grateful that she was a Methodist and someone was going to bring her a free meal in the next few days. And I was like, it's all good. And I asked what injury she'd sustained, and she said nothing. I haven't got any injuries at all. I got a couple of bruises. One was a decent sized bruise. And she said, but a really strange thing, the doctor said that there was a really bad compound fracture of my right shoulder, and they can't believe how well set, not left shoulder, of how well set the fracture was. It was only because 2 or 3 doctors were looking at the same time that they noticed that that there'd been a fracture there. And she said to me, that's crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about, but because I've never had a broken bone in my body. And that's the shoulder that I was laying hands on when I prayed for her. And she had no cracked skull. There was nothing, no other injury other than a bruise, no other injury. So I praise the Lord for that, because that was my revelation, I guess. That was like, goodness me, like this has really happened now. Like I've never done that before. If something happened to me like that, like I'm ringing the doctor, I'm not. And it's amazing. I've had plenty of opportunity to lay hands on people since then. But the reason for this testimony is we're selling a house in Ringgold right now, and we have tenants. We've had tenants in there for a couple of years, and they've been quite good up until now. But now we offered them the house, and they couldn't afford it, and they couldn't afford it, so it became our fault. And so they got really anti. Like, you can't put a lockbox on, you can't have home opens, you can't show the house, we're going to stay here until July, all sorts of things. And my natural reaction to that is fairly antisocial. And so I was kind of sitting there reading these texts, and steam was starting to come out my ears. My wife was kind of walking gingerly around me. And then she said, you have to calm down, Bruce, and you have to think about it, and then come back after your meeting, because this is Wednesday, come back after your meeting and then make some decisions. And that really slapped me, because that message coming from her was like, there you go. Okay. So I thought, okay. So I got in, I walked out the door to come to the meeting Wednesday night, and this amazing peace just came over me. It was just like, I'm good. Like, the Lord's got this. It was just like chalk and cheese. So I come to the meeting, the gifts were all to me. Like, every gift was like, this is the deal. You're here, and all you've got to do is give it to me, and I'll take care of it. And the talk was to me. Like, it was just, I've had it happen before, but it never ceases to amaze me when it does. And so I went back and testified about that to my wife, and she kind of rolls her eyes, which brings me a lot of joy, actually. So I told her all about that. And then the realtor, I told the realtor, I said, you don't have to worry anymore. We're not going through lawyers. We're not doing any of this stuff. The lawyer's a Christian, and she wanted me to get involved in lawyers, and she wanted me to stamp my foot and do all sorts of stuff. I said, no, I've put it to the Lord now, so it's good. Oh, but what about this? No, just don't worry about it. The Lord's got it. I'm cool. So she rang me up Saturday afternoon and said, I can't believe the change in this couple. They are friendly, they're helpful, they're allowing a lockbox on the door, they're giving me a key, they're opening the house up 6 or 7 hours a day for it to be sold. They've apologized for their behavior and their manner. It's just like 180 degrees. And there's only one thing that happened, was that the Lord got involved, or I let the Lord get involved is probably really what happened. So I just praise the Lord that it doesn't matter what. All you have to do is just kind of look at him. I think it was your testimony about focusing on the badge on the back of the car. And I thought, golly, is she talking to me? Like, it's just like, it's amazing when that happens. I praise the Lord, it's happened before, and I know it'll happen again. But it makes your life so much easier. And she's a Christian, and she can't get, Christian, I say in inverted commas, she can't get her head around it. She doesn't understand that if you give it to God and he deals with it, it's dealt with. She said, I need more prayer about this. I went, no, you don't. There's none now. But they do, I think, and it's like they need to bolster up, and we just say, go, no, we put that problem to him. He's dealt with it. Now we're on with the next one. So, yeah, praise the Lord, and I look forward to his return. Amen.